Hello, Level Up listeners. This is your host, Dr. Leland. Today so I have talked to him maybe three times already. The first one was with Ishani Bell. You guys are familiar who Ishani is. She's part of my Level Up rock star. Okay, we're rock stars because we don't sleep literally globally. I'm not saying that you shouldn't sleep. I'm just saying we don't. We're always up. Um, he basically was part of her dissertation and he had a lot of information. I was super impressed about his background. And I actually want to get to know him more. And you're probably saying, well, what's the value? What's the added value in this conversation? Why should we even watch right now? I want you guys to, whoever's watching live, great. If no one's watching live, because I didn't put it on as an event, I would want you guys to do pound replay and ask my special guest today of any questions you have when it comes to metaverse marketing strategy. Okay. And well, he put his name as Addy. So I guess I will say Addy. Welcome to Level Up Academy. How are
Thank you
you?
so much, Dr. Leyland. I'm very happy to be here, and I think it's a good thing that we are in a podcast now. We've had so many conversations before, and yeah, I mean, real name is Aditya Mehrotra, but in the metaverse, or as we call it, I have a digital identity that's called Addy. So yeah, it's good to be here.
Good to be here. It's funny when you say Addy because I think of Luke Hobson right now and with the Addy model. When we did instructional design with Ishani, I was like, Addy. That's just in my head right now. So welcome. I'm so glad that you're here and we're actually having this conversation and share it to the world. My podcast is all about inspiring the world to get to know you, your story, and how you're able to help us. And also just to inspire people to test something new, to look and review something that could be potentially helpful to them, whether it's for their business, their personal curiosity. The cat that will not kill this cat. Okay, you're like, oh my god, curiosity kills the cat. No, not these cats. Right? We're gonna keep moving, and hopefully, we'll reach to even one person to say, you know what, I'm going to try the metaverse. I don't know what it's all about, right? But before we dive into it, I want my listeners and also the people that are watching this to get to know you on a personal side, right? Can you go back 5, 10, 15 years of your life and how you got here today?
Awesome. Oh, so it's a big story. I would start by saying that I'm a proud misfit and a proud work in progress at the same time. If I were to say what my roots are, it's mainly sports because I come from India, and I was born and brought up in New Delhi, the capital city, and I'm a person who's been a standout, or maybe something which you're not a part of a big cohort of things. So I chose a sport at that time in India. I think rugby is not a really big sport in India, but I chose that game. I was like one of the only youngsters playing with 25-year-olds, 30 years, and I was what, 13 or 14. I was a very small kid at that point of time, prone to a lot of injuries, but um, I took that leap because somebody told me I was not good in football, and I wanted to be, you know, they call it the debate, football or soccer. But yeah, I was not good in soccer, but I decided, okay, let me give it another shot because I really believed in the notion of having a sport to be associated with, because it's not about just physical activities. It's much more. It's teamwork. It's a lot of values that you learn from it, and whenever it was in school days or sometimes in organizations, you're part of community organizations, you're doing a lot of stuff. You always carry those values because they help you build what you can do. And Dr. Leland, I would just say 1 year ago, 10 years ago actually, from today, which was 2020, we are in 2023. In 2013, I was interviewed by the All India Radio for showing excellence in rugby professionally. And I guess, somewhere around 15 or 16. And I was the only kid in my school who was playing on an international level. And yeah, at that point in time, I realized that this is just not just a sport. Like I said, I learned values of brotherhood, responsibility, hardships, and how difficult it is to be in a sport where the next person might probably just kill you. And it's something which helped me build my character, because I started taking accountability for everything I did. And when I was leading teams, in terms of the sport, it really taught me what it means to lose. What it means to make mistakes. And yeah, I think having that very early on in life, when I was probably just 16 years old, I had so many emotions with me. I was in my school. I was also going through my academics. I was all right in academics. I wouldn't say I was really good in academics, but when it came to understanding cultures, societies, groups, it really helped me bond with people, because I was able to adapt. And that's what happens in rugby. You have to find a gap between your opponents, so that you're able to find the opportunity to either score yourself, or build a strategy for your team to score.
Mm.
And that's textbook. That's what you learn in the early days of the game. And that's what helped me understand people. I was able to delve more into cultural groups, dances, a lot of other things. You wanted me to sing, you wanted me to dance in school. I would do that happily. And I still see those pictures from on Facebook, because that time Facebook was a really big thing. So I just sometimes go back and I'm like, okay, it's been a big journey. And yeah, I always see adversity as just not an occurrence. It's also a choice. I could have just gone through any other sport that could be much safer, and understood the fact that you can play any other sport that's safe on your body. You won't get injured or anything like that. American football is big in the US, rugby is big in the UK, where I am right now. But in India, if you want to send a child to play rugby, the parents would think he might just get killed
Yeah.
out there. He might just get smashed out there. I'm not going to do that. And I'm fortunate that my parents, they knew this. And I still remember that for every important session that I had in my rugby training, I could see my dad sitting on the bench. So that's something that taught me trust. He had trust in me. He knew he would get injured, but you know what? He'd probably just go in the next week. He'll find a way to do something so that he gets back in. And that's what I kept doing. So these values were very early on in my life, and I could see whenever I was in my class. I would go down to my rugby field at 5 o'clock in the morning, and I would sit in my class and my grade in my school. No one had any idea that I had gone through a very rigorous amount of training with Indian team players, with people from the Indian Army, and a lot of really professional officers, and matured professionals, where I was just a 15 or 14-year-old kid. I was a misfit everywhere, but I found my way. And that's what I think is, I say it's a privilege. I think what I've experienced in my past, it's not been easy. It's a very difficult part to take in, but it's also privilege that you choose if you take adversity as a choice.
Mhm.
And yeah, that's what my beginning has been. I've been a very enthusiastic entrepreneur. I've had my own business that was called the Brandtastic Company. And going back to my college days, I actually went to a university. I went to University of Delhi, but I was in a college in that university where it was not that recognized. So if I told them that this college was a part of this university, people would be like, "Is that even true?" And I'm like,
You're
"Okay,
making it up, Adi.
yeah." And as far as the competition that you see in India, I scored like a 93% in my 12th grade, and that was a good score. But still, there's so much competition when it comes to
Yeah.
population, that it's 90 or 90 plus, or it's nothing. And that's the
Yeah.
sad reality. You have to get into that grind. You have to understand what it means to survive in that scenario. And I
Yeah.
and I did. I made it to the top university, but not into the best college. However, seeing the scenario that I come from a sport that's not recognized enough in India, I've still made it through from there. I was in a college where I had to find a way to prove myself that this college is worth for me. I created something known as an e-cell, which was just a normal college society, and it was something that every college has, every university has. They have their small groups and societies, and I created one, knowing the fact that let's start something, let's build something out of it. Suddenly, I think through the power of design, I realized, and I am a hardcore design enthusiast as well. So I understand brand strategy and a lot of other things, which I'll probably come into later. I used design to build a logo for this society. I used a lot of elements. I built a website on Wix, put a couple of posters, and these kids were blown. They had never seen anything like this in their life. They're seeing a QR code, they're going into a website, registering out there, seeing some new experiences, some videos that they never imagined. They thought they'd probably see these things with companies and
Yes.
advertisements on TVs, but they're like, okay, we're seeing this as a part of our own college. Their curiosity spiked up. They were like, we want to be a part of this no matter what, because we want this to be a part of our own identity. And eventually, we got a lot of funding from and a lot of support from the college, even from the government of India.
Oh,
And
that's so
this is
cool.
and yeah, it was a big hit. We had more than 1,000 people joining in from
I
their
want to
cities.
highlight that. I want to
Yeah,
highlight that because a lot of people nowadays, especially with our, the way our economy is run right now, a lot of people want. I just heard from someone that they got a lot, like 60% of their workers got laid off. That hurts me in my stomach, right? Like
yeah,
that literally hurts me in my stomach because I've seen layoffs. It's just, it doesn't seem to stop. And people are like, oh, we're never going to go to inflation. How can we not if everyone is trying to still live, but no money to buy anything because you got laid off? And so this is why the gig economy and the gigpreneur is growing, right? Because we all have skills and we're like, why are we giving all of our time and money and effort and heartache to a company that is not even going to be there for you when you need it for your family? Like basic needs. And so I'm glad that you said that. What I got from that is that you created an opportunity when you can't find one, right?
exactly.
Your university didn't have it and you're like, I have the skills, I'll do it. That's what I did as well. We need to create opportunities when you can't find one. I wanted to be in journalism. They're like, no, you're Asian, you're short, you can't speak English. You're never going to go in journalism. I'm like, oh, fine. But I did public speaking. I win all the time, right? Comparison. I go and compete everywhere, but I still wasn't good enough. I went to college, went to journalism, was a chief editor, did a public speaking, still not good enough. I'm like, what else can I do, And you get
Definitely.
frustrated, but in the back of your head, you want to do it. But
Yeah,
there's no opportunity because you want to feel like the sense of belonging is so strong for humankind, right? It's so strong. But at the same time, it's so hard to fit in and belong to a group that doesn't even want you or doesn't exist in your life, right? So what did you do? You created your own opportunity. But I also learned from that without the support of your parents, you wouldn't have gotten there. And that
right.
is why a community of support is super important. So I wanted to bring us to today because that's really great information. But tell me, like, what traits and skills do you feel are the most important to becoming who you are today and what you're doing today?
Definitely. I think, doctor, it's more about acceptance. I think it's a big thing that I always use. Like I said about adversity, it's a choice. I went into that university. I knew, okay, uh, I wasn't expecting this, but all right, I think I'll just make peace with it. But when you do that, that's when your horizon opens up, because acceptance is an internal, acceptance of your internal being and your external being surpasses everything, and it's what makes reality possible. What we forget, we can't sometimes we are so engrossed in our thoughts that we don't connect ourselves with the existing reality of how the world perceives us, and that's the marketer's thought. That's a marketer's challenge. Now the good part is both of my parents have extremely good marketing skills. They're entrepreneurs. They are great marketers, and they taught me that skill. It came in naturally to me. So uh, when I used to see these things happening around me, I used to find a gap, and that's where there's this book that I read down in my second year of undergraduation. It was called The Brand Gap by Marty Neumeier. The same book has also been read by Steve Jobs right before he launched the first iPhone. Because in a lot of cases, we understand how a brand is represented to people. A brand is a gut feeling.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're associated with any brand that you want to talk about, it's a gut feeling. It's always related to an emotion.
Mm-hmm.
And uh, the point is, when you're dealing with adversity at this point of time, you have to accept that emotions create that friction inside your mind. Now it is very important to understand, what do you do with it? Do you want to use that emotion as a weapon? And if that is being used as a weapon, do you want to use it on yourself or on efforts that create something you could have not even imagined? I leverage the power of design to create a concept of entrepreneurship that brought me 200 people to collaborate with. That's what I call innovation. That's what I call using tech. There was not an app, it was not anything, it was just the power of using right design elements, right typeface. I didn't even know it was called a typeface at that point of time, to be honest. So yeah, and I was a self-taught designer. I used Photoshop for just fun. I used to make, when I was in school, I used to make album arts, cover arts for music that I used to produce on FL Studio. I never knew I was not good in creating music, but I could make really good designs. And that's where my first ever pivot happened. I'll keep using this word pivot because it's a part of who I really am. And I think that's where it's you emotion is either a weapon on yourself, or it's something that you can use as a weapon to create possibilities. That's what
Endless.
drives that's what drives us. That's what drives a lot of people. And if you can reflect that emotion into your cohort, or your 200, or that those 200 people that I just spoke about, it can create products, brands, concepts that change the future. And that's where I think that's it stayed with me ever since I did that, for the first time. And yeah, I think one of the course, if I would sum it up, I would say respect your roots, respect your parents, respect where you come from. I
Yep.
come from a land where, which is India, and India is really rich in values. We are grown with culture and
Yep.
thoughts and things that are told to us from generations and generations, and it
Yeah,
reflects
thousands
onto
of
us.
years. It's
Yeah,
instilled. Yeah, same thing for Chinese. You're like 2,000 years ago. I'm like, dude,
exactly.
I didn't live 2,000 years ago. But you're right. And I love that you said that in terms of emotions. And I want to focus on that and also pivot a conversation a little bit on the mental health side, because I just learned from almost 90 hours really of my certification in terms of you have to separate your thoughts and emotions, because those two, when we combine them as like a hybrid, that's when we get in trouble, because we can't differentiate between, is this an emotion or is just a thought, right? Like when you're saying, you're hungry, is that an emotion or a thought? When you're saying you're angry, is that an emotion or thought, right? But no one ever stopped and said, hey, Addie, hold on one second, I'm angry at you, let me think and reflect if this is an emotion or a thought. Like, it doesn't happen, right? So I
Yeah.
think you need to kind of just, if you know the difference between the two, like, how do you know what's good or bad? What is your ethical standards and what is your moral values, right? If you know those, what's good and bad, stop complicating things like all this other thoughts. It's just yes or no, good or bad. And my husband hates that because he's like, you're so militaristic, like all these rules. I'm like, yeah, I grew up with rules. It's either yes or no. You either respect or you disrespect. Like there was no in between.
Yeah.
And I try to find the gray area, and I'm working on that gray area. But I'm glad that you say emotions, because I feel like we do emotional eating, right? Like I literally, if I'm sad, I actually do not eat. I just sulk and drink coffee until I literally had bleeding ulcers. It's not even funny. Um, but when I'm happy, I eat and I exercise. And people are like, so you're happy right now because you gained 20 pounds? I'm like, okay, how about happy, sad, angry, and anxiety and depression? Like, just add it in there. That's what's happening with me right now. But I'm
Right.
glad you said that, because when it comes to marketing, right? Like, you know how people say, don't go to the grocery store or anywhere when you're hungry because you buy things you don't really need. How many of us really go to the grocery store? You need eggs. You come out with everything else but the egg, right? Like it happens all the time. And I'm glad that you talk about that. And I also want to talk about Level Up Academy, where like I can't
Right.
really see. So I changed that. Like I made it into a more of a white background, and the bold type. And Ishani was like, by the way, Addie will like nitpick your type, bold fonts, things. I was like, oh, good, I need that because I need someone to tell me like how to make this work. Because I don't know everything. I know what I know, and then that's it. I don't know anything and everything, and so that's why. Oh, Raquel said, hello, Addie.
Hello, Raquel.
Yeah, she's like, hello. Our Sia, she's the tech person, but I'm absolutely on board with the potential of the metaverse. Ooh, we're
I
gonna
like
talk about
that. I
that.
like the sound of that.
That's right. We will have a live stream element with festival I'm consulting for, and yes, it will be streaming in the metaverse. Woohoo! I already have an office in the metaverse. I love it. What a wonderful way to look at it, right? Seriously. See, it inspires me. Lead by example, Addie. Right? Yeah, it's just really amazing how people are not able to recognize their full potential when you're doing that. So let's pivot to a marketing conversation because that's what you're here, right?
Right.
What does leadership look like to you when you approach leading others in terms of like you have a client and they're a really good client, they're a really good company, and they need to rebrand themselves, but they don't want to listen to you. They're like, no, this is how we do it. Like, how would you tackle that?
Right. So that's what I get every time I speak to a client, and I'm like, okay, there's something wrong with you guys. Because that's how I sell myself. And I mean, it's something I do to everyone. Definitely not. I'm under a practice. So but when it comes to leadership, specifically in this case, there has been a lot of speculation around marketing. This is something that I put across to everyone that I speak with. We have reached a point in our timeline where marketing is just not an art, it's a science. It's a science that can be absolute. And I by absolute I mean to say that we are not at that point of time where we can still say this could be a possibility. Like, okay, when you work around campaigns, you're like, yeah, so we're working around this concept, and this is something which we're coming up with. This is the amount of users you can get, this is the amount of downloads you'll get, and this is the conversion rate. um there has to be absolute numbers, and we are at that time in sciences and in technology where that is possible. Now, by that I mean to say that there is a direct correlation of these activities with trust, and that's what's missing a lot in this industry. You see a lot of critics, a lot of people say the metaverse is dead,
Mm-hmm.
and I understand that that is a completely justifiable opinion. I will come into that later, but the point is, all the players that we have in this realm of how we do things need to focus on establishing brand trust. And by that, I always emphasize on saying that we need to build brand safe environments. Now, this is a completely important aspect, again linked to emotions, because trust is an effort, but it leads to an emotion that builds more conversations. If you can do that, you're earning more karma points, just not for yourself but for an industry that you represent, the people you represent, and the futuristic perspective that you can bring not just to thousands but millions. And by that it means you have a duty to serve. You have to care about your audience, you have to educate them, which we are doing right now as well, and sustain these audience by getting them to the right platform, and which could be where they are and where they want to be. This is what I feel is very important as of now, where we are in this space. Marketing is a very vulnerable conversation when it comes to people saying that, okay, I like this, but what's my exact ROI? That's what people want, but people are not ready to understand where they are. So that's what we have to clear the air by getting figures, facts, numbers, perspectives, and even there's so many resources that we don't look into, but we can. It's just that how do we take that step? If you do that, you are a validated, quote unquote, validated leader. and a validated thought leader in this space, because people can trust you and other people will follow your practice to build that right community, and that builds the right brand safe environment. And that's what I want for the metaverse, and this is what I stand for. So that's my take.
That's great. Now, I have a question that's like I'm gnawing in my head when you were saying that. How can we, okay, for example, I've dabbled with the metaverse. I have actually put my YouTube in there for like a minute and the metaverse. I have like, and there's things that I can't find the answer for. And I literally didn't sleep until 2 a.m. to figure out how to do things because that's me. Like it bothers me. Like even if I'm like laying in bed and I'm really sleepy, but my brain is like, why couldn't you figure it out, CJ? Why? And so I have to get up and like do it again. And so my husband's like, go to bed. You need a nighty night tea. I was like, I can't. My brain is just so bad right now. And so what I usually do is I just write things down and then go to bed so I can really go to bed. But my question is for a let's say that you're a starting entrepreneur business and you're like, hey Addie, what can you do for me so I can actually create that emotional trust. Let me back up. To create that, invoke that emotion of like, I want to be part of this group. And then build my trust from there. Because the trust is built based on your relationship with the people, right? You can't just build trust on brand without action. But how can someone start if you're just starting a business, very, very like newborn business, and you're like, how can I establish that emotion so I can invoke people like, oh, I want to be part of whatever, right? What kind of actionable items can you give them in terms of like what can you do now?
Right. It's That's a very good question, doctor. I would say it's the first thing that a lot of people who are startup founders do ask themselves. And the first thing is that we have to stop looking at brands as brands. We have to start looking at them as case studies that have a lot of problems. And that's where I have this sticker on my laptop, and it's a quote that I really like. Sell the problem you solve, not the product. The metaverse is not just a product. It's not a platform. It's just not experience. It's a solution to a lot of problems that you cannot solve through social media. And that's where I come to the point that when you deal with such concepts, like, well, let's remove the metaverse for a case, right? Let's talk about brand strategy. A lot of case people have brands and they do a lot of activities and they still don't get the returns that they're looking for. And yeah, for example, let's say you make a logo and you're like, yeah, I like this logo right now, and I think this is gonna people are gonna like it. I build a product. I say, okay, this is gonna work in the market. A lot of people do this. They don't have the research for it. They don't have a lot of insights that back it up. And that's where we go to these people and we do the first thing, that is asking the right questions. This is something that is coined by Christo, because I used to be a part of his community called the Future Pro Group, which is a massive community of around 700 brand strategists and digital marketers from around the globe. I am still a part of the community right now, and I do get engaged in a lot of these sessions. So the first thing I learned is to ask the right questions. That means you're not just asking the questions around the brand. You're tapping into the client's sentiment. Your client tapping into their thought. Like you said, you go to sleep and you still have questions. That's what I would want to ask. I would say, okay, what's your thought process right now? I mean, if you're going to play on the driving range, are you smashing your irons, or are you just making sure that the shot goes great? That's the difference. We have to understand the client sentiment and the brand and the consumer at the same time. There's a triangular effect. It's called a trifecta effect in marketing. We have to understand all three things considered. If you can do that, and you can come up to the client and say, okay, I found a way for all three of you. Let's see if this works. And for that, I need your time and I need your money. If you can do that for them, they'll gain trust because you care. You understand all the three family members. If you do that, That's when conversations start changing. And what I've usually seen in most of the industries around this thing is the fact that there's a set product package that is sold. You go to the website, you're like, okay, buy my package. You do a lot of things and you're like, okay, this is what we can offer you, because this is what we do for 10 different clients as well. You don't need that. And that's what I think we are coming back when the metaverse steps in terms of coming back. We are moving more into personalization and
Mm-hmm.
customization,
Mm-hmm.
because it's not just about mails now. Maybe you don't know, maybe we might just have a conversation on mail to fix up a meeting, but we usually end up speaking to each other on cameras. Maybe you have a cloud based headset which is much lighter now, because the headsets that you use in your normal basis are not just a headset. Like, for example, I use a MetaQuest 2, and it's a really heavy piece of hardware. But we also have a lot of alternatives which are lighter in their display, in the hardware itself, and we have found a way to reduce that effect through cloud computing. Now the thing is, we are going back to the point, we are going more towards personalization.
Mm-hmm.
That's what will make these conversations more clear, crystal, and there will be more trust. Because if you are helping a brand understand a pivotal moment of saying that, okay, we can actually, I don't know if we can meet in real life, but we can actually meet in the metaverse.
Yeah.
You know
No,
what,
I
the
love
client,
it. Can you
it's like,
imagine you're selling something to your client and said, "Hey, meet me at the metaverse." They're like, "I don't know about that." And that's what one thing I like about the Gather is that you don't need a special equipment. I have vertigo, okay? Like if I sit in the back of a car, and especially if my husband, he used to do racetrack and race car driving. No, no. His car is way too fast. Like it's 800 horsepower. Like I can't with that car. Even just a little jit, I'm like, "Oh, no." You're right? And I'm a grandma driver. I don't do like 120 whatever. I'm like, no, no, 70, 80, I'm happy. Get to point A. But when I put the quest on my head, I get dizzy and I feel like nauseous. So I said, I think they have a long ways to go for people like myself. Another thing that I want, that I think Apple did a great job with their marketing, is that they tap into their gender identity. Like most phones are so boring, black, gray. All of the headphones that are expensive, black, gray, silver. And now they're like, oh, pink, green, orange. I'm like, oh my God, you guys grew up. Like, seriously, right? Because what I used to do is put a vinyl. I teach cutting machines. I have a lot of passion, but the reason I did that is because I don't want to look at this silver thing. It doesn't make me happy. Okay. That emotions like invoking, I'm like, oh, no, this is boring. So I cut vinyl to make my headset, who's silver or green, into pink. I fly a drone and my drone is like white. I was like, okay, I'm going to make my drone a Hello Kitty. So I did that. But here's the thing, when you're trying to customize something, and most people want a cookie cutter, okay, if you're going to be giving me a metaverse marketing addy, how much is not going to cost me? And you're like, I don't know. We have to talk about what your needs are. And I think a
right.
lot of people also said like they don't want to talk because they're going to be like, oh, it's going to be a big number, right? Because it's metaverse and they don't know. So for those people who don't know anything about the metaverse, can you sum it up in like a minute? What do you think? What is the metaverse?
Right. Oh, so I get this a lot. So the very basic answer of how things are, I can actually say that, what, Neil Stephenson, he actually said that in snow, the first phenomenon came in snow crash, and this is what happened over time and all that stuff. It's a simple answer. It's a virtual setup of what we experience today in reality. It's kind of a digital twin, but you have access to new opportunities, new concepts that you could build on. You have new innovations that you can explore, and new ways to interact with people. That's it. That's it. It's a virtual replica of what we can do with opportunities beyond what we can explore. The question is, how much are we willing to spend on it, and how much can we create from it? And that's where, when a lot of people say that the metaverse is dead, the point is, we need to find a way to co-create with brands and organizations who create these products. That's where a lot of marketers, it's not the tech. It's definitely not the tech. The tech is fine. We are still in the early stages of where we are, but we have to find ways to co-create in ways that create value for the entire ecosystem. This is why I now also position myself as a metafluencer, which means that I will collaborate in the future with a lot of metaverse brands and companies who create the metaverse platforms to find value that I can use as word of mouth for a massive, massive audience so that these brands get a massive benefit of what they create. So that's a perspective.
Love it. I actually created a video about the metaverse. I don't know how last year. It's on my YouTube somewhere. And I got stuck on doing something on my metaverse, and I looked and looked and looked in the community and nothing. Then I finally figured it out. I'm like, I'm sure people are looking for it, so I posted it. Now, I think this is a great opportunity. I'm running a global summit in October 11th, 12, and 13. Wouldn't it be nice if one of our session you lead a metaverse meeting?
Well, I guess we're a small community, but we can solve the problem.
Right? It doesn't matter because small problems sometimes can get big problems. Like, for example, you're sad today, right? But imagine if all of our people are sad today and we're not doing anything about it to make them happy. That would be a lot. Like, we already have suicide everywhere in the world, right? Because of that one thing that you think it's a small problem. Today it might be a small problem, but if it becomes every single person in the world have that problem, it becomes a big problem, right?
Right.
So I never underestimate the small problem for a bigger solution. I'd be like, go big or go home, Addy. Go big or go home. That's how we're gonna
Yeah.
do things. For sure. But it would be so cool having a metaverse session for speed networking. That would be amazing. Actually, right? Now I wanted to pivot about what do you think brands right now? I shouldn't keep saying brands. What do you think business owners, entrepreneurs, even the coaches? I have a lot of coach friends. What kind of tips would you provide for them in terms of branding and using the metaverse? What kind of tools? Like, there's when we say metaverse, right? You and I understand it, but a lot of people might not. It's something
Yeah.
new, and it's something scary when it's new. What is, like, for me, I definitely would want you guys to go together. That's an easy metaverse version of getting your feet wet without, all the videos and the tech. Well, there are some moving things around, but it's not super scary where you need coding and all the background in IT. What other tools do you recommend for others to kind of see how they could use it for branding?
Definitely. So, Doctor, I would just say one thing before we come to that point.
Sure.
When it comes to user adoption, there are a lot of people who say that there might not be a lot of people who can come on board to the metaverse because they'll get confused. We have to understand one point is that one of the key features of metaverse is gamification. And as of now, if you understand the global scenario, we have 3 billion self-proclaimed gamers in the world. So if that's a question, then it has to be answered in a very simple way, that it is easy to onboard users into the metaverse. Now, when it comes to platforms for brands to explore, in terms of, I'll probably just use the metaverse as first, is I have a particular inclination for ease of access for spatial, and it's a very good application, a very device agnostic active application, I would say. Can be used everywhere. You don't need a VR headset for it, but you
What is
walk
that
in and
called?
it's called spatial.
How do you spell that?
Spatial. Yes,
Is it spatial.com or
it's spatial.io. I can put in the link as well later on. I'll just probably send you the
IU?
link. IO.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's a metaverse application mainly used for a lot of displaying a lot of digital collectibles, but users can manipulate it based on their usage. It's very easy to use, very device agnostic, and you can onboard a lot of users onto it. Secondly, I think I think it's if you used Roblox before, you can you can continue using that because that's actually pretty good. Um, I wouldn't say it's a place where you can have a meeting, but if you want to explore the metaverse further, understand any worlds and opportunities that you can have, it's a very good place to have more discovery options. because it's gamification on an extreme level. And yeah, I think these two are one of the, I think, best platforms, I would say. Again, I would put it forward that we are in a very early stage of this journey. So if you're expecting something like Call of Duty Warzone or something like Last of Us, you're not getting that right now. But
Yeah.
yeah,
I am like, hey, now. I watch my husband. I love zombie movies, so we always like play video games. That's our date night. It's kind of boring, but for us, it's entertainment.
I
Like,
like that.
yeah, my husband and I do like lunch on Fridays. Me and him just lunch date without the kids. And then Friday night is game night for us. We pick whatever game. And then I love racing game because in real life I can't race, but in the the game I'm pretty good. Just not in real life. I bomb it everywhere. But then Saturday and Sunday night is zombie nights for us or horror movies. Like we like just that's our bonding, I guess. It's been 20 years, so that's how our entertainment works. Whatever works for you. But I love video games. I love gamification. But before we end this conversation, I first of all I want to thank you for your information and input on metaverse and marketing. Um, Giving back. We're going to talk about giving back and kind of loop in on your purpose in life as well.
Mm-hmm.
Two questions, or more than two questions, but two sets. The first one is, have you discovered your purpose in life? And the second one is, the Holiness Dalai Lama said, change begins within you. Use compassion to change your world and ultimately our world. So, Adi, how do you hope to change the world?
Okay, so coming answering your first question, I think yes, I have found my purpose in life. I've, like I said, my journey has always been to create opportunities where things, seem bleak, and I make it work for things. So, I see I have delved into the metaverse, and I feel like when it comes to multidimensional marketing, I want to be at that spot in life where, um, how should I say it? I mean, we have to understand that I want to be in one of those positions where I have an organization. I already have a company called the Brandtastic Company, which does branding. And if you ever need help with brand strategy and brand creation and digital strategy, you can always reach out to me. But what I want to do is I want to build a team. I want to build the world's strongest team that's super efficient in pivoting with brands, consumers, clients, and the entire ecosystem at the same time to the point that it's ahead. Because after the pandemic, we have seen the biggest pivot in consumer history ever. And it's there in research, it's there in paper. We are seeing pivots like never before. And that's what's leading to a lot of new conversations around, are we there in understanding what the consumer is really doing? We're not, but we could be. That's what I want to bridge. I've started my journey on there. I have been pivoting with brands, with consumer insights and everything, and I think I'm there. And I want to do that for masses. So I think that's what my one of the biggest purposes is. And if I can do that, then I create new possibilities which are unimaginable. So yeah, that's my main goal. Answering the second question, so I've had different perspectives of seeing the world, and I've grew up in Delhi, in which is my hometown, and I'm now in the UK in London. So I'm seeing a different shift. I've seen a cultural shift, that a lot of value driven concepts that we see in Asian countries like India and China, and a lot of other things, are being adopted into the West. Whereas the East, which is India and China and all the other countries itself, have had a very fast, very strong technological enhancement. You're seeing Amazon building its largest base in India. You're seeing there's a recent company which I want to mention. It is Ajna Lens, and they have come up with a new XR lens, which is phenomenally excellent. I would say I'm talking about them, so they should feature me. But yeah, they are.
Hashtag.
Yeah, but I've seen their product. I'm seeing same things happening with Meta, so I'm seeing a lot of growth on both sides. Pico did exceptionally well, which was a China product, and I'm seeing the global changes. But as the West adopts more cultural context and the East adopts a lot of technical context, there is a yin and yang effect.
Mm-hmm.
because we are getting into information on both ends that sometimes we don't need, and we get confused of how we react to such information. So, you create thought, you create emotion, and sometimes it's not easy to handle those emotions, which leads to mental health issues and a lot of other
Mm-hmm.
things that come into play. My job is sometimes to make sure that I'm able to simplify this process by eliminating those forms of technology from the user's cycle of how they consume brands, products, and information. I want to reduce that impact so that the information that they consume is good for them, is creating utility for them. And I want to partner with brands, I want to partner with a lot of organizations, global, big, massive organizations, to do this so that we can create a positive impact with the inflow of such information. Because let's be honest, this cannot be stopped. Innovation will take place,
Mm-hmm.
cultural shifts will happen, and more
Mm-hmm.
people will adopt more faiths and concepts and a lot of other things. But we have to be, as marketers, as people, as I would say, marketers are not just artists, and they are not just people who sell products. They are people who understand the world from a perspective that is not common to the layman perspective. So I would say it is our responsibility, and I think it's one of my biggest jobs, to make sure that I can fix the consumer journey through any form of relevant technology, to make sure that their lives are easier. And that's
Yeah.
what my main goal is.
That's so good because we're bombarded with so much information. Like I was just talking to somebody today and I said, I've noticed that a lot of people self-proclaim. I'm also self-proclaim when it comes to ADHD. I don't know if I have it, but all my family members says I do. And I don't think it's and I'm wondering why is everyone in that capacity or how are we doing that? And I think it's because of our environment. Like we're trained. Hello, if you can't make your point in 30 to 60 seconds, you're not in TikTok material or you're not an Instagram reel material, right? Like you're having that emotional attachment. Like, I got to get my message in 60 seconds. And if I don't do it, I'm not good enough, right? It's that backhanded thing. And you're like, okay, but I have so much to say. Well, no one's going to listen to you, right? It's that. And it's like, oh, that's marketing. How is that marketing if you're not even sending your message, right? And so having to talk to you, it's so nice because there's always the numbers and science behind what you're doing, and it's not just about emotions like I feel this way therefore it is, right? And you're like, no, that's not how it works. Like, you know what I mean? In a nicer way, and said, hey, we can help you with this. So if someone wants to get your information and said, hey, Addy, can you help me with my branding? um they can find you in LinkedIn with me in here, and I would love to connect you with the people as well. But at the same time, is there any last minute information that you would like our listeners to know about you, and how are you inspiring the world through your experience?
I would just say that there's a lot of confusion out there of how we're seeing the future in terms of tech. A lot of questions around the metaverse. I have a podcast that's called the Metacast with Addy and Taz. I do it with my co-host, and we are the world's first fully immersive podcast series. So you can just search that on Google. It's called the Metacast with Addy and Taza. And as for any question that you have on with your brand, just be sure that if you're not able to find answers for yourself, just send me a message on LinkedIn. It's a very simple thing, and I can help you ask yourself the right questions first, and then if you want to talk about it more, always there for you. So yeah, that's what I would say. I mean, I want to align people's thought first before I want to align their brands.
Yeah, asking the right questions. How the heck do you know if it's the right question if you just have a question, right? Like, Addy, seriously, where are we going? Back up a little bit. So I'm glad you said that because I always just tell my students, I'm like, ask questions. It doesn't matter what it is. And now you're like, no, ask the right questions. I'm like, no. What if I just have a question and I don't know if it's the right question? So it's you gotta get filtered when it comes to marketing because it's very specific. So thank you so much for your time today. I totally appreciate you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Leyland. It's been a super engaging, fun session, and I think the next time I want to talk to you is when I think you can probably join us in our metaverse room as well. So it's gonna be fun, and like I said, it's device agnostic, so you don't always need a VR headset, but you'll always get the experience. It's near you, it's always with you, and it will stay with you. That's what I would say now.
Awesome.